Hi, welcome to part one on the topic discovering yourself through education. Discovering yourself through education. What do we mean to discover yourself through education? Now, most people they do not know the value that they carry. They do not know who they really are. They don't know the worth that they have. Instead, it is the society that labels them and unfortunately does not label them correctly. So, today, what we're going to talk about is the way in which education is used to help you identify and discover who you are, the value that you're worth, and the uh, relevance and the purpose that you actually have in existence. So, I'm going to start off by talking of the different education systems that are there, the main common education systems. Now, we have the mainstream academic education system and we have the self education system. In the mainstream academics education system, this is a very structured education system which you can find in a preschool, you can find this in a primary school, you can find this in the secondary school or high school, or you can find it in an academy, college, and university. Now, the similarities among all of these different types of schools or institutions is that they have got students, they have got pupils, and they have got teachers, and they do have like direct communication. So, like a group of students with a teacher, and this is a they go in different stages where you start off with your preliminary school, that's the preschool, so preparing you to go to primary school. In other countries, preschool is known as kindergarten, is known as nursery school, or in other countries they call it a crush. Now, some children they go for a year, they go for 2 years before eventually they go into primary school. And when they go into primary school, they'll have to start dressing up, wearing a uniform, depending on which part of the world you come from. In the United Kingdom, where I was teaching, primary school kids have to actually dress up in school uniforms, unlike the preschool. Same thing as when you go to secondary school, when you have finished your primary school, your secondary school or your high school, you also get to dress up in a uniform. This is same as in the United Kingdom, the education system in the United Kingdom. And that will be both for state schools and private schools. Now, where I am residing now, which is Finland, it's a different sort of like dress code, let me say. In Finland, they don't dress up in uniform from preschool to primary school to high school. And let me just say there's a difference between a high school and a secondary in the sense that a secondary school does not have A level. It does not have the advanced level. Advanced level is when you're preparing to go to university, the stage before you go to university. Whereas high school is inclusive of advanced level or A level. Now, moving forward, we're talking as well of academies or college. Academies in some parts of the world will be an academy will include a primary school and a secondary high school all together in one particular location in some cases. And then after that, students either go to college or university. College, usually students go there to learn technical courses or technical trade. So this is becoming a builder, a plumber, electrician, a mechanic, a plasterer, a carpenter. Those are very much technical. And at university, that's very much more academic, where a student can spend 3 years to 4 years studying to get an academic qualification, therefore a degree, to either become a lawyer, to become an accountant, to become an engineer, to become any of the sort of professions that you acquire after going to university when you gain your degree. So all of these are examples of mainstream academic education. Another education system is the self-education system. Now, the self-education system could include homeschooling or homeschool. It will include long-distance learning or learning through correspondence. This involves self-study and self-training. And another example of self-education would be seminars. So people get to attend various different seminars in different parts of the world or different parts of the country, where they'll meet with specialists to kind of have like a discussion, or they'll have some presentations. And learning, self-studying or self-training could involve learning from the media or learning from others, where when you learn from other people, you have got a mentor. Now, I'm just going to explain a bit further about self-education. I gave examples of homeschool and long-distance learning or learning through correspondence. With homeschool, this is a very common way of actually gaining education in the United Kingdom, in Finland, in the United States, in most Western countries. Now, the students do not have a teacher, they do not have a classroom. They actually are at home and they get to actually learn while they're at home. So they develop self-studying skills, and they do get assistance from a guardian or from their parents. Now, they could start from when they're into the preschool age until they actually get to high school age. However, they are given the curriculum of what students in the mainstream academic institutions are learning as well. So they would learn from home. The difference is that they're learning, in a different environment. In some cases, they might take on a different curriculum altogether. However, they get to a point where they also get to do exams if they want to gain certain qualifications. They would have to register with an examination board in order for them to actually gain a particular qualification. So this is homeschooling, starting from preschool age to high school. When you finish your high school sort of like level as a homeschool student, there's the long distance learning or learning through correspondence, which in the United Kingdom we have a popular university called the Open University. Now this university, they will send you all the materials, they send you all the lectures that you need, either by post or they will send online. So you don't have to go into a classroom. You get to learn from wherever you are. And they've designed this particular Open University to enable adults that have got responsibilities, like they've got children and they've got full-time jobs or different circumstances that might affect them to study like full-time in a standard university. So this is sort of the kind of homeschool for adults, the long distance learning or learning through correspondence. Some people can be living in one country and they can actually be a student of a long distance university in another country, which is very possible. Why do people do that? People do that because it enables them to kind of the time that they need to study. It is quite possible for them to do so through long distance learning, as well as the cost of long distance learning tends to be cheaper than the usual mainstream university. So the importance of this type of education system is it's about the individual studying, self-training, developing your skills to actually, gain information, learn things in your own sort of like free environment. Now, what also happens is that with the mainstream academic education, is that the the structure in the mainstream is that the materials are given to the students by the teachers, and they're given assignments. So there's more kind of like guidance on what they need to do. Self-education is slightly different, is a bit more flexible, and you can learn as in whatever format you actually want to get to learn. But this is one of the very important things, is that even though you might be a student in the mainstream academic education, but once in a while, or quite often, you do get time to be to self-study. You do get time to self-study. For example, when you finish class, you go home, you're given homework, but sometimes you can study things, which you might not be taught in your class. You might get to study a bit more than what you've already been taught in school. So when you do that, you're developing an art of self-studying, and it's very important, because when you develop that skill, it prepares you to when you go to higher education like university, because at university the structure is very different, because you will not always have the guidance. You have to be very much independent in your studies. So those are just the two differences between the mainstream academic education and the self-education. Those are sort of like the distinctions, between the two education systems. So moving on, in terms of these education systems, they get funded differently. With the mainstream education, there's state funding or government funding. There's scholarships offered, or non-governmental organizations can actually fund students. In some instances, there could be private funding, depending on your circumstances and which part of the world you live in. So private funding coming from parents, from family members, from other guardians. Whereas with self-education, there tends to be self-funding. In some cases, there could be state funding. For example, with the Open University in the United Kingdom, there was some kind of funding. There is some kind of funding that comes from government, but it's in the form of a loan, which you would have to repay afterwards when you finish your studies. But there's also an element of self-funding, where what is common in the Western countries is that some students who are foreign students, they go to work and they also go to study to university. So from work, whatever they earn, they use it to fund their studies. In some cases, some people, they work for a period of years, accumulate and save as much money so that eventually they go to study. So that is in light of the funding of these two different education systems under the topic of discovering your value or discovering yourself through education. So in the next series, in part 2, under the same subject of discovering yourself through education, I'm going to also highlight two important theories found in education and how they are related to this topic on discovering yourself through education. Well, thank you very much for listening, and I hope to catch up with you on the next part, which is part 2 of the same subject. You take care. Bye for now.